Can Bitcoin break its trend of diminishing returns? In this video, I want to go into this in depth. Let's get started. I want to start with a chart of Apple's stock. Up until a few years ago, Apple was one of the most valuable companies in the world. And you can see here it went public in December of 1980 at a split adjusted price of about 10 cents per share. 16 years later, so 6,051 days after IPO, after the initial public offering, when Apple's stock was being sold publicly, the price was about 15 cents. So it went from about 10 cents to about 15 cents. It went up 50% in the first 16 years of going public. In that time, it had multiple pumps and then dumps, and then pumps and dumps over and over again. And the people who just held ended up with basically no returns. 16 years of just seeing their stock go up and down, up and down. And if they sold 16 years in, they would have missed out on what came next. From 1998 to 2000, it went pretty crazy. The dot-com bubble happened and then it collapsed. So it went from about the price that it IPO'd at all the way to $1.32. So it went from about 10 cents to $1.32, 13 times return, not bad. But then it crashed again. And the people who held through this massive volatility in the beginning, they ended up with really no returns. They barely made anything. The stock basically went sideways for something like 22 years. But after this 22-year period, we start seeing this massive, massive growth. If you had gotten through, and this keeps going, if you had gotten through this initial sideways movement, look at the kind of growth that you would have experienced. You would have seen your stock go up, then come down, go up, come down, go up, come down, over and over again, until today, one share of Apple stock is $211.27. So you would have gone through basically 22 years of sideways movement. And after that, you would have been called lucky. You would have been told that you bought Apple and you don't deserve your returns. You should share your returns. You should pay taxes. You would have been told that you got lucky, that you basically picked a needle in a haystack, because people don't see the volatility that you went through. So you can see here, all of that volatility doesn't even show up when you zoom out on the chart. But when you zoom in, when you go through the day to day, you can see how painful it really is. But I guarantee you that, let's say if you had sold back here at $1.34, you probably wouldn't have bought back when Apple's stock bottomed. You would have probably either forgotten about it or you would have expected it to go much, much lower, unless you were really paying attention to the market, but the average person isn't. So if you sold here at $1.35, you would have missed out on everything that came after that. Like, this chart is just absolutely insane. And I think that this is exactly what's going to happen with Bitcoin. The people who are selling their Bitcoin today are basically giving it away at a very low price compared to where Bitcoin's price should be going. And this is why I think that we're just getting started. The people who already understand Bitcoin will probably continue to buy for years, for decades. If they create more value than they consume, they will continue to buy more and more Bitcoin. But you have to keep in mind that Bitcoin has reached $100,000 before the majority of the world even has any idea what it is. So if you really zoom in on this chart right now, it seems like it's very volatile. It seems like it goes up, it comes down, goes up, comes down, goes up, comes down. But if you zoom out, if you think about what price Bitcoin should be at least from what I think, my estimate is that Bitcoin's price has no top. I think that Bitcoin can literally go up forever. If we even go to $10 million, that would be bearish, in my opinion. At some point, we're going to get through $10 million, and $10 million will be a rounding error. The number of people who will buy Bitcoin hasn't even close to peaked yet. I would assume that because of the ETFs, more and more money will come into Bitcoin, money that's never, ever been exposed to this asset before. People will move value from the legacy financial system into Bitcoin. And what that's going to do is it's going to stop money from flowing into the legacy financial system. So all of the value that's in the legacy financial system will eventually be drained into Bitcoin. And that's what's going to make Bitcoin go to 10 million, 20 million, $50 million. We haven't even started yet. We're at 1% of that eventual price. And people are giving up. They're giving their Bitcoin away. A few days ago, a whale sold 80,000 Bitcoin into the market. They just dumped them on the market. And this is what happened to the price. If you're zoomed in, you're going to notice that Bitcoin's price went from $120,000 all the way down to $115,000. But if you zoom out on the chart and you look at it from a month to month or even year to year basis, you can see that that sale barely even made a dent on Bitcoin's price, because just in the last few months, Bitcoin is up from $75,000 all the way to $117,000 in a few months. If you blinked, you missed it. If you sold because you thought that this was the top, and then you didn't buy back in at the bottom here, and you just let it go, and you thought Bitcoin's price would go a little bit lower, it'll go to $60,000, $50,000. Now you can't buy the same amount of Bitcoin again. Back in August of 2024, when Germany sold 50,000 Bitcoin, the price fell from $65,000 all the way down to about 50,000. So that was a drop of about 25%. This time, the drop was less than 10%. So what I'm trying to say to you here is that Bitcoin's adoption is just starting. If you can get through the volatility, in a few years, you're going to see that everything that you went through was worth it. You're going to see that Bitcoin's current price was indeed a rounding error. At some point, you're going to be wishing that you could buy at $120,000. You're going to be wishing that you could go back to 2025 and buy Bitcoin under $1 million. So do whatever you can today to get as much Bitcoin into cold storage as possible. If you can buy consistently over time, if you can buy $1, $10, $5, whatever you can buy every single week, every single day, whatever your schedule is, whatever you're comfortable with, you're not going to regret it. In 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to be really happy that you put in the effort to accumulate as much of this asset as possible. If fiat currencies survive, you're never going to have to sell your Bitcoin. You're going to be able to use your Bitcoin as collateral to get fiat currency loans, and you'll be able to pay for whatever you want to without ever giving away your asset. This is how powerful Bitcoin is going to eventually be. Either fiat currencies keep losing 50, 60% of their value every few years in Bitcoin terms, or they completely die and they go away and nobody uses them anymore. And we actually go to a Bitcoin standard. On that Bitcoin standard, owning zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, which is 10 million Satoshis, is going to be extremely valuable. You're going to be able to buy a house for, I would assume, under 1 million Satoshis. Keep in mind that this may take decades to play out. Bitcoin has to absorb the value of basically everything around it before it can be the global money. So, right now, for example, Apple alone is worth more than the number of Bitcoin that are in circulation. So, Apple is worth something like $3 trillion. The total market cap of Bitcoin is about $2.3 trillion. So, Apple is worth 28 million Bitcoin. Nvidia is worth about $4.2 trillion. So it's worth about 30 to 35 million Bitcoin, when in total, there's only 21 million that will ever exist. There's only ever going to be 21 million. And the entire world's value is going to be valued with those Bitcoin. You're going to be valuing things in Satoshis. You're going to be paying for things in Satoshis. You're going to see your hourly wage paid in Satoshis. So how can one company providing one product be worth more than the entire world's money supply? What Bitcoin is going to do is it's going to absorb all of the value from those companies, all of the excess value that shouldn't be there. It's going to go into Bitcoin. The people who own Bitcoin are going to be rewarded. Right now, the market cap of all assets around the world is about $1 quadrillion. So Bitcoin is only about 0.2% of total assets in the entire world. One of the reasons why I think that the diminishing returns theory that people have claimed Bitcoin will go through is going to eventually be broken is because of the ETFs. The ETFs are now allowing people from all around the world to use their retirement assets to buy Bitcoin. And those retirement assets are worth trillions of dollars. This is going to unlock a lot of capital that's currently in index funds, in REITs, in just individual stocks, and it'll be moved into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is going to absorb all of it. You're going to see that Bitcoin can keep growing and growing and growing because you can buy smaller and smaller fractions of Bitcoin forever. Today, 100 US dollars can buy you about 85,000 Satoshis, which is 0.00085 Bitcoin. At some point, you're going to see that it can't even buy you 8,500 Satoshis. Then it won't be able to buy you 850 Satoshis. At some point, that $100 bill won't buy 100 Satoshis. The people who are selling Bitcoin today won't be able to sell their Bitcoin again because you can't recreate Bitcoin. There's only ever going to be the 21 million that I mentioned before. There's never going to be more than that. So once those people have sold, that Bitcoin is gone. A lot of it is going to be locked up and it'll never be sold again. So what do you think is going to happen to the price? The price goes up to convince you to sell. When you see the price going up, you think it can't go any higher. We've topped out, and you give away your Bitcoin. But you have to remember that buyers are continuously buying more and more Bitcoin. The passive flows have started. People are buying Bitcoin weekly, monthly, however often they can. They've set up recurring buys. Money is going to continuously go into Bitcoin forever. The price will go up forever. The 1% of people who figured out Bitcoin already are probably going to continue to buy for the next 7 to 10 years. Over time, the buyers keep compounding because the people who bought Bitcoin before will continue to buy, but every single day, newer and newer people figure out what Bitcoin is and they start stacking continuously. And again, you have to remember, I need to hammer this point home. Only 1% of people have actually figured out what Bitcoin is. With 1% of people figuring it out, we're already at 120K. Do you really think that if the rest of the world figures out what Bitcoin is, they're not going to want some? Do you really think that they're going to ignore the best performing asset of all time? Most of the wealthiest people on earth haven't even figured this thing out. And right now, it's actually possible for you to get to 1 Bitcoin, to get to 0.1 Bitcoin, 0.01 Bitcoin, whatever is affordable for your budget. So it's up to you whether you want to be part of this journey where Bitcoin goes to millions, tens, or even hundreds of millions of dollars. If you don't want to join it, that's perfectly fine. I don't blame you because it does seem kind of scary. It seems too risky. Maybe you should wait until Bitcoin does go to $10 million. Maybe at that point, it will be a little bit more stable. Some people claim that Bitcoin can't get to these prices because it would eventually surpass the market cap of gold. It'll surpass the market cap of the US dollar. And that's perfectly fine because the price is determined at the margin. The buyer and the seller at that moment are the ones who confirm what price they want to make that sale for. If they're willing to sell their Bitcoin for a certain price, that's what the market price is at that time. If there are no Bitcoin available for sale, what do you think will happen to the price? The US dollar price will eventually be infinity. People won't want US dollars for Bitcoin because US dollars can be created out of nothing. If you hold on long enough, you're going to see that even billionaires want what you have, and they'll be willing to pay you whatever you want for your Bitcoin. If you want a house, they'll give you a house for a fraction of your Bitcoin. If you want a car, they'll give you a car for a fraction of your Bitcoin because what they want is what you have. And nobody else can create more of what you have. So they have to buy it from you somehow. Understand this and hold on for the next 10 to 15 years because if you do, I know for a fact that you're not going to regret it.